Joining me on the show tonight, lawyer and advocate from the Supreme Court, Brinda Grover, also former diplomat Vivek Karchu, to shed some light on how these guidelines can be dealt with. In the studio, I have former Police Commissioner B.K. Gupta and Praveen Swami, senior journalist as well. Brinda Grover, I actually want to open by asking you, what can be done in this case? The diplomat and his family, they've all been accused of gang raping these two women, have fled. There's nothing that the Indian government can do. How can you pursue this case with the Saudis?
Maya, before I come to the legal part, I want to underscore here that this is not just a case of rape or gang rape. Here what we are looking at is torture. We are looking at human trafficking, we are looking at slavery, and sexual assault, sexual abuse was part of that. And this is not uncommon in situations of this nature. So when we are going to look at law, yes, the Saudi diplomat enjoys immunity under the Vienna Convention, and which is then translated in Indian law under the Diplomatic Relations Act of 1972. And that immunity from arrest, detention and criminal prosecution is absolute until and unless Saudi Arabia considers it, deems it fit to waive that immunity, which clearly they have not done. And in fact, they have denied that any such incident has taken place. When we look at issues like this, today in the world, there is a Paris Committee of what is called modern forms of slavery, which has been documenting how legal provisions of immunity by diplomats has been abused to actually use domestic help, abuse them sexually as well as in other ways. So we today have evidence that this legal immunity, which in 1961 was put forward for reciprocal purposes to allow diplomatic agents across the globe to conduct their affairs, is today being abused and misused. So A, there is need to revisit this nature of immunity. B, when it comes to this particular case, there is a case of human trafficking here, which clearly is being done by people other than the Saudi diplomats. From what is reported in the paper, these women were raped, sexually assaulted by many men. Do all of them enjoy diplomatic immunity? What is the police telling us about that?
Fair point.
So what we need to, and thirdly what I would say is, when we talk about, and we are actually, this case shows us the dynamics of power in many contexts. The dynamics of power between India's relationship with Nepal, which we otherwise claim is part of our cultural extension and our friendly neighbor. And now our relationship with Saudi Arabia. So where is India going to weigh in on this? And what is the power dynamic that operates between a woman who is a domestic help from another place, trafficked, being employed by a diplomat? Surely within Saudi Arabian embassy or any other embassy, are there no rules to see who is being employed by a diplomat?
All right, Brinda Grover, I want to bring in Vivek Karchu into this as well, because actually it's a very interesting situation. You have the women concerned, Nepalese nationals, you have the person who's accused from Saudi Arabia. What can be done, Mr. Karchu, in your experience as a diplomat? How can there be justice in this case? Is the MEA going to push for justice?
I think justice has to be pursued. The honor and dignity of women is supreme, and it will be a sad day when India overlooks the honor and dignity of any woman on our territory for the sake of diplomatic ties. That's one. The second point is that the immunity granted to diplomats and their households. So the immunity is not only to the diplomat but also to the family. That immunity is absolute, but it is of a functional nature, which means that it continues as so long as the diplomat is in the country and is an accredited agent. Once he leaves, like the Saudi diplomat has left, there is no immunity. Therefore, to my mind, investigations in this case should first of all go on. They should not be closed. Second, I feel, no, please hear me out. Second, I feel that it is an appropriate case if the investigations go in the direction of confirming the allegations leveled against the diplomat and perhaps some members of his family, those who enjoy immunity,
Yeah.
then it will be an appropriate case for the issue of red corner notices against the diplomat.
Okay.
It is not unknown that countries issue red corner notices. The effect of that would be that he would be an international fugitive,
Right.
and it would be apparent to all countries, including Saudi Arabia, that he is wanted by Indian law, and we should insist with all countries that if he visits them, if he is on their territory, we expect that he will be arrested and apprehended, and that proceedings will be launched to get him back to India.
Okay.
These
Ultimately
things
the
are
ball-
done in such cases,
All right.
especially of such heinous crimes.
The ball in Saudi Arabia's court right now. We're also being joined by Shazia Elmi of the BJP. But before I come to you, Shazia,
No.
in the studio, B.K. Gupta, former police commissioner, joining us. Sir, in your experience in law enforcement, a case like this, you know, Mr. Karchu saying red corner notices can be issued, he'd become an international fugitive. Ultimately, it also depends on his home country to work. How can police work in this kind of a situation? Because the crime has been committed in India. There are also Indian nationals who are being prosecuted, who are being investigated at this point in time. But what about the perpetrators?
With my experience, I can cite this Israeli diplomat attack case
Yeah.
in 2012, where certain Iranian nationals were suspects. So we had to ultimately depend on Iranian government, and we had to take up the matter with the MEA. There was very strong evidence against these nationals, but ultimately we submitted charge sheet in the court of law, and then it is left to the MEA and Iranian government. It is up to the Iranian government to cooperate, up to what extent they cooperate, and if they don't cooperate,
There's
nothing much
that
you
can
can
be
do.
done. Okay, Shazia Elmi, come in on this, because you know, if the Saudis don't cooperate with the investigation, there's nothing that Indian police can do, there's nothing the Indian government can do. I mean, a red corner notice is going to achieve what?
Yes, Maya. In fact, it's really unfortunate that the Saudi embassy actually helped this particular diplomat to flee while the investigation was underway. Now, this is extremely serious. Let's look at what has happened. There was a case of brutality, and one of the maids got out and somehow managed to give this information. There was actually a raid, which also is not supposed to happen. Now, the Saudi government has made a complaint that the diplomat's house should not have been raided. But I must say it's laudatory how Gurgaon police really came forth and raided the house and rescued these two women. Now, these are two Nepalese women, ordinary women who have been raped and brutalized and suffered all that they have, and it really makes you wince.
Yeah.
On Indian soil by a Saudi diplomat.
Yeah.
Now, the ball is totally in Saudi Arabia's court, but Vienna Convention is not meant for diplomats like these. You know, 1964 Vienna
Well,
Convention.
unfortunately,
for
they can't be
immunity,
selective
and
about
then-
the diplomats. It's meant for Mr. Karju. I know you want to make a point.
True,
Before I
true.
come back to you, just a minute, I want to get Praveen Swami in on this as well. Praveen, it's an interesting situation that India is finding itself in today, because it's almost like the shoe is on the other foot. We have serious cases of where Indian diplomats have violated host country laws, and India has also brought them back, claiming diplomatic immunity.
Absolutely. You've had Indian diplomats accused to have participated in everything from, you know, human trafficking to spousal abuse. And the sad part of the story is, okay, fine, so they have diplomatic immunity and you bring them back home.
But then what are we doing about
But what are we
prosecuting them
doing
here?
about those cases? And usually the prosecution is not very enthusiastic. Sadly, this is a global problem, Maya. If you know, just since in the 80s you had cases in the US where the son of a Ghanaian diplomat was arrested on 15 counts of rape and had to be released 45 minutes later because he claimed diplomatic immunity and was never prosecuted. You had the son of a Brazilian diplomat who shot dead a waiter at a bar in Washington DC and again couldn't be prosecuted, nothing happened. And this is partly because this, you know, global brotherhood of bureaucracies kick in and say, "Arey, you know, these people are after all ours," and protect them. And the sad truth is that public outrage in almost any capital you visit today is mounting over this kind of egregious criminal behavior. And unless governments actually get serious about this and say, okay, we respect diplomatic immunity, but we are going to prosecute these people at home, then one of the things I fear we'll end up losing is a diplomatic convention that is very valuable and does play an important
Mr.
role.
Karchu, come in. You want to make a point? Come in on this.
No, first of all, I think we've got to keep some perspective here. While each heinous crime needs to be prosecuted and justice has to be done, the larger issue of diplomatic immunity has to be taken into account. That's one point. The second point is, I beg to differ with Shazia Ilmi. I think the Vienna Convention has to be observed. And if the Gurgaon police violated the Vienna Convention, they have to be held to account, and that is why I think this matter now needs to be referred to the CBI. But please don't think that a red corner notice is a light thing. If there is a red corner notice, then a diplomat cannot go on any foreign assignment, even if his government is protecting him. I know of cases personally where a red corner notice was issued against a diplomat and his career got finished there and then. So therefore, while we expect the Saudis and we should pressure the Saudis that their cooperation is needed,
Mr.
yet
Karchu,
the red corner notice will be a very valuable piece. And I wonder why Basant, I think Basant can clarify. It is not for MEA, it is for the police to ask that a red corner notice should be issued.
If I can just ask a follow-up question. The ambassador of Nepal has actually made a statement which we carried a short while ago. Is it Nepal's jurisdiction and responsibility to push for the Saudis to bring these people to justice? Because the MEA statement unfortunately was quite bland and only talked about how this gentleman had left under the provisions of the Vienna Convention. The call for the Saudis to also help with the prosecution did not come from the MEA.
I think the MEA statement should have been fuller. That is point one. Point two, the Nepalese government has no role in this matter. It was a crime committed in India.
On Indian
soil. But that is what I started with.
Yeah.
That any crime against a woman, any crime against any woman, irrespective of nationality, on Indian soil, has to be investigated, and adequate judicial action has to be taken by itself, forgetting the deeper issues of relationships, etc. A crime is a crime. A crime has to be approached as a crime. I don't see in my experience any diplomatic niceties being involved in this.
All right.